Hey guys, welcome back to T-Bones Tech. Today's video is my beginner guide to the brand new EOS R. This is Canon's first full-frame mirrorless camera, and my full 4K video test of this camera is coming soon. So definitely make sure to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any coverage on this camera. So first, we are going to start out with the basics. We are going to give our EOS R some power. So we're going to tilt the camera onto its side here, and here we can see the battery slot. And we're just going to open this up just like so, and it's actually going to swing out just like that. Then we're going to take the LPE6 battery, and here we can see there's a little arrow. We want the arrow to face upwards, so we're just going to slide it into the camera's body until we hear a click. Just like that, and now we know the battery is secure, and then we're just going to close the cover again until we hear a click, and now we are ready to go. Our camera is now fully powered. So that was easy enough. Now we are going to mount our brand new RF lens to the Canon EOS R. So we are going to start by twisting off the protective cap counterclockwise just like this until it comes off. Then we're going to take the back protective plate off of our Canon 24 to 105mm lens, and again we're going to twist that counterclockwise until it comes right off. Then what we are going to do is we are going to line up this red dot here with the red dot on the EOS R. So we're just going to line these straight up just like this. Once we have these lined up, we're going to twist it clockwise until we hear a snap. Just like this, and now our lens is going to be fully secured to our camera body. By default, the lens is going to be locked, which means that we're not going to be able to zoom using the zoom ring. So you're going to first have to unlock the lock here. So here we can see the lock button, and what we're going to do is we're going to press it back this way towards the camera body. We're going to click it like this, and we're going to hear that snap. And once we hear that snap, now we can freely move the zoom ring. The other buttons and features on this lens are going to be our AF/MF button. If we want to autofocus with this camera, we have to have this button slid all the way forward, and then our camera is going to be able to automatically focus. Now, if we want to manually focus, we have to have the button pressed back towards the camera body to the MF side, and then down below we have our image stabilizer on or off, and that's pretty much self-explanatory. Next, we're going to talk about some of the inputs on the side of this camera. The first one we're going to talk about is our headphone jack, and that means that we can actually listen to live audio coming in through the camera, or we can also listen to previously recorded audio from shots that were filmed with the Canon EOS R. Then we have our microphone in jack, which means that we can plug a Rode VideoMic Pro or any shotgun microphone onto the top of this camera. And then lastly, we have our HDMI and USB and a shutter release input right there. Here is the back of the camera with all the functions and our screen. But first off, we're going to have to turn this camera on. And to do that, we're going to move this dial counterclockwise from the off position to the on. So we're going to switch it just like this. And that means that we are ready to go. Taking a look at the top of the camera, we can see a few notable buttons. Here is our mode dial, which is going to allow us to switch different modes. And then the dial up here is going to be for our shutter speed. Then we have an LCD illumination button right here, and then we have a control lock button, which is going to lock all the controls on this camera. And here at the back of the camera, we can see our LCD screen. So it's actually a flip out tilt touchscreen. So we're just going to put our finger in, then we can pull it out just like this. And again, this is a touchscreen, which is extremely useful. This touchscreen has a lot of versatility to it. We can actually flip it out all the way so we can actually see ourselves to take selfies or for when vlogging. And then if we push it back just like this, we can now have our LCD panel on the back of the camera like a traditional camera would have. Now we are almost ready to start taking pictures with this camera, but of course we have to put our SD card in. So to put our SD card in, we're going to have to open up the SD card slot by pushing this way, and then it's going to automatically open up like that. Then we're going to take our SD card and we're going to slide it into the camera until we hear a click. just like that. Then we're going to close it and then push it back this way until again we hear a click, and now our SD card is secure. And here we can see our camera is no longer telling us that there is no SD card and that we are ready to begin shooting. All right, so next up we're going to talk about the mode dial, and it's a brand new mode dial and I'm still not entirely sure what I think about it. We're going to press mode on it right here, and now it's going to pull up all of the different modes that we have here on the camera rather than having actual dedicated little pictures on the mode dial. So here we can see modes like fully automatic mode, which is scene intelligent auto, and then we can see we also have modes like shutter priority mode and aperture priority mode, and manual mode is where you can completely control every single element of your picture. Now some of you guys are probably wondering, where is the video mode on here? Well, the video mode is actually located by pressing the mode button like we already did, followed by the info button right here, and then it's going to pull up all these different modes but in video mode. So again, here we can see aperture priority, shutter priority, all here but in a video mode. But then to go back to stills, we're just going to press info again, and it's just going to bring up our stills menu again. It's one extra step to get to the video, but it actually works relatively easily, and as you guys can see, it really doesn't take much time to be able to switch it to video. All right, next up here, we are going to talk about the menu. So right now we are in scene intelligent auto, as you guys can see right here. And when you are in fully automatic mode, it's assuming that you're more of a beginner. And because of that, we're going to have a lot less information here in the menu. But if we switch this over to any one of these manual modes, we're actually going to get a ton more info here in our menu. A lot of beginners try to dive into the menu to try to learn the camera, but they're in automatic mode and they just don't really see any information that they can really do anything with. So if you want to do anything in the menu, I recommend putting in manual mode first. We're going to go over a couple of very important things here. The first one is going to be our image quality. Up top here, we can select RAW, which is going to save the most amount of data, but the files are going to be very big, and you're going to need a up-to-date software to be able to process these RAW pictures. Down below we can see our JPEG mode, and you're going to want to select this one all the way to the left because that's going to give you the max resolution. All these other modes are going to give you lower resolution and worse image quality. Now to back out of this menu, we're just going to press menu again, and here we are back to the main screen. Now moving over to the third section here, we can see our exposure compensation. If you want to tweak your camera's light meter to make your pictures darker or brighter, you can access that right here. Moving over to number 4, we can see our white balance, and here we can see it's selected to automatic, but we can select it to different settings here: shade, outdoors, flash, or of course a custom white balance or color temperature. We're just going to leave this in auto for most of our shots and then select OK, and it's going to bring us back to this main menu. Picture style, I usually like to shoot in standard, but every photographer is going to have their own preference. A lot of people shoot in neutral or portrait style, but we are going to leave it in standard for now. Moving over to number 5, we can see our HDR mode, and this is how you're going to access it. It's super easy and simple. You're going to turn it on, and then we can take HDR, which is going to be multiple exposures. Also up on top of this, we have a touch shutter, and that allows us to actually touch the screen as a shutter rather than using the shutter release up here. And that's going to allow for less jerky action when actually taking the picture. The next main menu is going to be your autofocus menu, and here is a ton of very important information. Eye detection we can enable right here, which is going to allow us to focus on an actual eye, which is absolutely amazing for portraiture. It actually works relatively well on the EOS R. So if you're taking head and shoulder portraits, you're probably gonna want to leave that on. Then we have settings like drag AF, which is really cool because you can be looking down at our viewfinder, and then we can actually drag to focus wherever we want it using the touch screen down below. Then we have our AF method, and here's all the different methods. I like to use the face tracking right here, but there's tons of other autofocusing methods, and here's where you can select them. Moving over to the second section of the autofocusing menu is going to be our focus guide. And this is actually probably one of the most important things on this camera as far as my focusing goes. And here's the focus guide. We're going to turn this on, and we're basically just gonna leave it on because it's extremely important. There's a lot of people who like to use focus peaking, and this actually works really good on the camera too. So some people would prefer to use focus peaking, where I really like to use the focus guide. And we're going to show what the focus guide guide is right here. So to demonstrate this, we're going to press the menu to get out of our menu, and here we can see our focus guide right here. Right now, as you probably can see, our little camera here for a demonstration is not in focus. So what we're going to do is we are going to turn the focus ring until these two arrows meet. And when these two arrows meet, they're going to turn green just like this. And that's going to let us know that we have tack sharp focus. So from here, we can take a picture just like this. Now, if we want to review this picture, we are going to press this little box right here, and here we can go in and actually review the picture. So we can pitch to zoom just like this to check our key focus, and here we can see that this picture was extremely sharp and that our background was actually pretty nicely blurred. We can see a little bokeh right here, which looks really nice. If we want to get back to live view, we are going to press the blue square here again, and here we are back to live view, as you guys can see. We'll go back to live view here in a minute, but first we're going to go back into the menu. There isn't really anything too notable here in settings 3, 4, and 5, so we're really not going to talk too much about this. And then in this blue menu here, again, there's not really too much information that's too important that's going to affect your pictures, but we are going to move over to the wrench, and there's actually a lot of good information here in the wrench. One of them is format card. You are not going to want to hit this because you can easily erase all of your information here. As you guys can see, if I were to hit OK, I'd lose 50 gigabytes of data. But format card is extremely important because as soon as you get a brand new SD card in this camera, we want to go to format card, and we're going to want to format this card inside this exact camera. Moving over to number 2 here in the wrench, we can see our LCD brightness along with some power saving modes. I like to leave it here on the stock, but if I'm out in a very bright and sunny day, I'm going to want to crank that brightness up to the max. Here in the number 3 wrench, we can see our battery info along with the beeps, which we have enabled right here. If we want to turn all the beeps off on this camera, we can disable it just like this. And now the camera is not going to beep when we go into different settings. Now we're going to check out battery info right here. And here we can see our recharge performance and how many pictures we've taken. As we can see, we got 63% battery. And this is a very important section of the camera. The battery that's in this camera is one of the old LPE6 batteries that I had lying around. And that's why my recharge performance isn't very good. The battery's about 4 years old. Going over to number 4 here, we can see our shooting display info. And there's a lot of good information here, which I just don't have the time to go into every single setting here. But under display performance, we're always going to want to be smooth rather than power saving. Power saving is going to have the menu be a little bit laggy and live view a little bit laggy to save power, but we're always going to want to leave that off. Under number 5, we have our wireless communication settings, which is very important. That's how you're going to connect your smartphone to your camera. And then in the orange section of the camera, we're going to see some very good information here, which are going to allow you to really completely customize all the settings and all the dials, and you can tweak them all in. And here we can change the main dial. Right now it is set for shutter speed. And then the ring underneath our mode button is going to allow us to change the aperture very quickly. And the EOS R has one other really cool feature here, and that is our control ring. So all of Canon's new RF lenses have this really cool control ring, and you can actually customize this ring to do basically whatever you want it to do. Right now I actually have it selected to change our aperture. And this is actually really cool because just like those old school cameras where you had to control the aperture on the actual lens itself, you now can do it digitally on your lens. But it's actually fully customizable, so you don't have to have it set to aperture. You can have it switch to shutter speed, or you can even have it switch to ISO. But the control ring is a really cool feature on the brand new EOS R. Alright, so now it's time to go back to live view to talk about some really important settings. Our shutter speed, our aperture, and our ISO. So first off, we're going to talk about shutter speed. Our shutter speed can be controlled by using the shutter speed dial here at the top of the camera. So as you guys can see, as I twist this shutter speed dial, the shutter speed is going faster or slower. You can also change the shutter speed by tapping on it just like this, and then we can scroll through our different shutter speeds. Using a slower shutter speed is going to let more light into our camera sensor, and using a faster shutter speed here is going to let less light into our sensor, making our pictures darker or brighter. Right now we're going to stick to 1/80th of a second shutter speed. Next up here we can see our aperture, and here we can control our aperture by easily tapping on it, or we can also assign one of these buttons to be able to bring up our aperture control. Our aperture is going to control the iris of the lens, so the opening of the lens, and that's going to allow us to let more or light into our camera sensor. A lower f number is going to allow more light into our camera sensor, and a lower f number like f11 is going to let less light into our camera sensor. As you guys can see here, it gets very dark here at f22, but if we stop up our aperture all the way to f4, it's going to get very bright. Now another thing the aperture does is actually going to control our depth of field. So fast apertures like f4 are going to give us a very nice looking shallow depth of field, and apertures like f16 are going to give us a very deep depth of field. Now we're going to demonstrate this by taking a picture right here, and we are going to take a look at our background. And here we can see some very nice looking bokeh here. But if we were to take the same picture here at f16, our bokeh is not going to be nearly as good. So let's go ahead and take the picture here again. And here we can see that our background is very much in focus. And instead of a shallow depth of field like we had here at f4, basically everything is going to be in focus. Now this can be good in some scenarios and it can be bad in some scenarios. For example, if you're taking a picture of a person, you're going to usually want a very nice shallow depth of field. So anything that's behind them is going to be out of focus, and so your subject really stands out and pops. But if you're shooting a group of people, you're probably going to want to stop down your aperture so everybody's face is in focus. Now the last very important feature here we're going to talk about is our camera's ISO. So our ISO is actually going to control our sensor sensitivity to light. The EOS R has absolutely fantastic ISO performance, so I can even shoot at ISO 6400 and still get relatively clean pictures, but still the lower ISO number, the better the image quality is going to be. So let's take a picture here at ISO 800, and we're going to take a picture just like this. And now let's take a picture here at one of our highest ISOs, ISO 25,600. So as you guys can see, our picture is way overexposed, so we're just going to increase our shutter speed. And by increasing our shutter speed, we are going to allow less light into our camera sensor. So now let's go ahead and take this picture and we'll compare the two pictures against each other. When looking at this very small camera screen, we actually really can't see a big difference between these two ISO pictures. As you guys can see, I'm switching forward between these two pictures, and you really can't tell which one is which. But if we hit info here, we can now see some more information about this picture. We can see our shutter speed, our aperture, and our ISO that we shot. We can also see the picture's image quality. So here's the picture at ISO 800, and then here's the picture at ISO 25,600. And as you guys can see here on this small screen, you really can't see a big difference. So what we're going to do is we're going to pinch to zoom in. And zooming in here, we can see how sharp this lens and how sharp this camera is. Look at this absolute amazing quality. We're going to zoom over to this lens part, and it's extremely sharp. So take a good look at how sharp this is, because we're going to go out and we're going to switch to the picture that was shot at our higher ISO here. And here's the picture that was shot at a very high ISO. So let's zoom in to the lens section. And here we can see it is actually still very sharp, but we're starting to lose some image quality and it's just not quite as good. And that's why we're going to want to usually shoot at a lower ISO. But that being said, I am amazed at how good this camera can shoot high ISOs like 25,600. If this was shot with an APS-C camera like the EOS M50, the picture would be completely falling apart and look absolutely terrible zoomed all the way in using a high ISO like this. The EOS R truly is a very impressive camera. When we're shooting in live view mode, to gain access to a lot of settings that are usually found in the menu here, we can actually hit the Q. And here we can see settings like our image quality, our white balance, and again, a lot of stuff that we found in the menu. They put a lot of the important stuff here under the Q, and that makes changing all these settings very easy, and you can do it right on the fly. Another really important button here is going to be our function bar. And if we hit the menu here, we can actually change what the function bar does. Right now I have it selected to ISO, and a lot of people keep it selected to ISO, but you can have it selected selected to a lot of other options right here. We're going to stick to ISO for right now. To customize this, you have to go over to the operation menu and all the way to number 4, and then here we can actually customize this bar. So to activate this, we're going to put our thumb on the button, and then we're going to see that little line right there, and it says on. And from here we can change the setting like the ISO right here using my thumb, and this is really easy to use, especially when you're looking down the viewfinder, and it's super easy to use right here. It does take a couple seconds to make sure that you actually didn't hit it by accident and that you're ready to go, but as soon as it's activated, it actually works very nicely. But that's about it for this video. If you guys have any questions, make sure to leave them in the comment section down below. I'll try to answer all the questions that I can about this camera. If this video helped you out a lot, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up down below. That's going to help me out a lot. And of course, make sure to hit that subscribe button because you don't want to miss new videos just like this one. But that's all I got for you guys in this video. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will catch you all in the next one.